without you, my friend. And I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. We've come a long way, from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again.
George Kite, U.S. Marine War veteran, Presidential Guard to President George Bush. Welcome, sir.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yes, it's an honor. For everybody watching, I'm Rob Lason, the host. Today, this guy here is with Violence in Jesus podcast as well. If you want to tell everybody about your Violence in Jesus podcast.
Yeah, man. Well, as a three-time combat veteran, as an Army sniper, as a former Marine, once I got into the faith, once I became a Christian, I kind of found that there was a niche that was missing among that kind of culture, what I call the warrior society. Not just cops and veterans, but we would call the guys, the type of dudes who go out. We like to, might like to go shoot guns, might like to go camping, might go fishing or hunting or something like that. And growing up, all the Christians that I knew, especially the adult males, were like, the polo wearing, khaki pants having, older guys, which were respectable. But as I got older and as the people I were around, we kind of grew in the faith. We realized that there weren't a lot of those guys that we could connect to, and that we can, talk and hang out and fellowship on the same level, who understood what it was like to go out and do harm to the enemy, and at the same time trying to walk the faith, So I get some hate on the title Violence in Jesus, because a lot of people say those two things don't go together. But it's all about the walk, and how men of faith who are in that lifestyle, that culture, come home and raise a family and try to live a godly life. I mean, I interview special forces guys, interview regular military vets, law enforcement guys who've done both the veteran world and the contractor world. I had a guy on there a couple months ago who is a pastor, and he's also an MMA fighter and does private security. So it runs the gamut. But yeah, it was kind of the bridge the gap right there.
Nice. Yeah. Anything, we're a Christian-based podcast too. So when I seen Jesus, I was all for it. You coming on the show.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it means a lot. And then on top of you doing your thing with Jesus, you're a Marine War veteran. How was that, man? Because I know that was the closest person you had deployed was Jesus, huh?
Yeah, you're right, man. Hey, let me tell you something. I went to Iraq back in 2003, and as an active duty infantry Marine, I went back and forth 2003, 2004, 2005, and I tell you what, man, there's nothing that draws you closer to the Lord than the imminent fear of death every time you turn around. So I mean, I could see Christ and everything while I was over there, almost to the point where I could just see where a lot of people were lost and was just wanted to try to be the shining light. And your faith strengthens when you're going through a lot of things like that, and you meet a lot of people of the faith. And the best part is it's always like a surprise. You never really know like what type of dude you're going to run into, because like I said, I had this idea that we were all a bunch of Mr. Rogers, and then you find some of these guys who are just hardcore guys who's been there and done that, and you find out they love the Lord, and it was pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, amazing. So tell us about how was it, man, being the presidential guard for George Bush?
Oh, well, first of all, it was really tough to get in there. I didn't realize. So the story goes, I was about 16, 17 years old, and I was trying to go, to the Marine Corps. My dad said, you can do anything you want as long as you don't join the infantry. So I went to the recruiter and I was like, look, I want to be infantry. I don't care what my dad says. And he's like, all right. And my dad got to him and said, hey, man, don't let him go infantry. So he was kind of in the middle of something. And this recruiter used to date my older sister. So he put me in for Presidential Guard. I didn't know nothing about it. All I knew is I got to be an infantryman. So Marine Presidential Guards first go to infantry school. They earn the title of infantryman, and then you go to security forces school. So for me, it was crazy. I mean, they did such a deep background check. They were talking to high school teachers and all this stuff. And I went up to the Washington, D.C., and I was at the Marine barracks. And I mean, it was just the craziest thing I'd ever been involved with, because as a Marine or as a soldier, a sailor, somebody who's enlisted in the military, there are people at the top that like you never get to see, never get to talk to. They're like they're bigger than celebrities, because they have way more power than a celebrity. So here I was in DC, and I'm like interacting with generals and stuff, and these guys would like just show up on the job and like, buy you a cup of coffee or a box of donuts, and you're just like freaking out. So I was there, and I met all the old school people like Colin Powell and Condoleezza Rice, and then finally my clearance came through. I went up to Camp David, and man, I tell you what, Camp David is a world of its own. It is secluded in the mountains of Maryland, and you don't get to leave a lot. When you do, it's under scrutiny. You have a top secret clearance, and I have some funny stories, man. Like back in the day when the new Matrix movie came out, I was on Camp David in the back of the theater with a machine gun, loaded, with the president and all his family watching the Matrix, and I watched the Matrix in the back, standing up. I think it was like Matrix Reloaded or whatever, the second or third one. Anyways, this is back in 2002, so 20 years ago. But yeah, we would be in the gym working out or something, and George would just kind of diddy bop in, or we'd be playing basketball, and him and some of his people would come in, and he was probably one of the most down to earth people I ever met. I always tell people he just reminds me of a redneck who accidentally became president. He was just that kind of guy, man. He would come in and he'd want to talk about like hunting and trucks and that kind of stuff. And when Thanksgiving came around, he served us all meals. So when we went through the chow line, he was the one serving us meals. But media and stuff's not allowed in the depths of Camp David, so a lot of that stuff people didn't see. But yeah, man, it was wild. It was crazy. We called it Oz because of how weird and different it was. You'd have these 4-star generals and 3-star generals and all these politicians come around, and I mean, they're in like flip-flops, which is like, it sounds normal, but like when you see the president in flip-flops, it just, your mind doesn't put those, you're like, oh, he's supposed to be wearing a suit all the time. Well, he doesn't walk around in a suit 24/7, especially when he's on vacation. So it was one of those weird things where you kind of, stuff gets in perspective for you. But I liked it. For me, it was boring. At the time I was an 18-year-old kid from South Carolina. I grew up on a dirt road, and all I wanted to do was go see the world and do things. So right before the war in Iraq popped off, they came around and they asked for a bunch of volunteers, and man, I jumped at the bit. I was ready to go, and I had gotten into some trouble. I was out past my curfew, and at the time, my first sergeant, who's like your most, your manager, your supervisor, your biggest supervisor, he tells me, he's like, well, I'm not going to send you to North Carolina because I know you're from South Carolina. You're just getting more trouble. So I'm going to do you a favor. And he gave me orders to California. So I was really far away from all my friends and stuff. So I got to go out to California.
Nice. Yeah, Cali life, man. That's got to be nice. What was that like living in California compared to to the East Coast?
It was different, but I had this preconceived idea of what it was going to be like, and then when I got out there, I realized everybody was really cool, really down to earth, and that being in the military, being from the South, I hooked up with everybody. I had friends from Virginia and Alabama and North Carolina and all this other kind of stuff, and I mean, we do the same things, man. Out there in the desert, you can't really get into a lot of trouble because you're out there and nobody out there. So we we had a bunch of dirt bikes and four wheelers and stuff, and we'd go out and ride around in the desert. And man, for me being a kid from South Carolina, it was just really cool. All I did was explore. I mean, I would drive 3 or 4 hours, you know, just to go see somewhere and hang out for the weekend. I I ran into another funny story. I ran into a chick, a Paris Hilton, back in 02.
Oh,
Yeah, well, I didn't know who she was, and no one else knew who she was. And it was kind of one of those things where we're like, all right, cool. Like, we don't know who you are. But that was long before she was, you know, anything on MTV. Like, and then like a year later, I remember we come back from Iraq and she had her own TV show and all that stuff. We were like, oh, that's cool. So it was weird, man. It was a good time. It was a good time. California was it was different, but people were really nice. And I honestly, you know, you didn't expect that, because, you know, there's an image about California, but people were really nice out there. And you know, there's a lot of people who love the Lord out in California. And I think it's pretty, especially the middle of the state going up towards the redwoods and stuff like that. And I like the desert because, you know, you can ride a dirt bike for hours, you can shoot guns in either direction and not hit a thing. And you know, we would hang out there and camp and have a bonfire and stuff and not worry about getting in trouble. So I liked it a lot.
yeah, man, Cali life, man. I was out in Cali for a short period, out there in the Hollywood, Los Angeles area.
Yeah.
It was pretty nice.
I was in 29 Palms, which is like the armpit of San Bernardino County, out in the middle of nowhere. So
yeah, nothing but palm trees and desert, huh?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So how long were you in Cali? Was that your last stop, or that was just like you were just there a little while?
I was there for about 6 years, man. I was there for 6 years. And never. It's funny, people talk about joining the Marines, and I never set foot on a single boat. The whole time I was there, you know, we were just going back and forth to Iraq. And during that time, you know, after the initial invasion, we came home. You know, everybody was told that the war was over. You know, we were told, hey, the war was over with. So we kind of went back to regular Marine training, and, you know, we were doing like mountain warfare in California. Forgot the name of that mountain that we go to, but we went up there. Bridgeport, California is the name of it. We went up there for mountain warfare training, like the snow and stuff. And then that winter, we actually went to Japan, and we were like, all right, you know, went to Japan and started doing jungle warfare training. And then if you're familiar with Donald Trump had a Secretary of Defense named General James Mattis. At the time, he was the 1st Marine Division General. He was my 1st Marine Division General. And he came out and he kind of told us, he's like, hey, I'm not going to send you back to Iraq. You know, enjoy your time here in the Pacific. We'll get you some good training, blah, blah. And we were like, all right, cool. And like 3 weeks later, he comes back and he's like, psych. And this was the beginning of the surge, what they call the surge. And they they started pushing, you know, tens of thousands of troops in Iraq. You know, this is about the end of 03, beginning of 04 time frame of getting into the surge. And so we're in Japan, Okinawa, Japan, trying to pretend it's the desert, and we're like trying to fight the war in Iraq in the desert. So we got introduced to something called IEDs, which is a new thing to us, but apparently they had been a thing in the Bosnian and Chechen war back in 94, 95, 96. But yeah, so we're like we're in Okinawa, Japan, trying to pretend it's Iraq and do all this training. And then in 04 is when I went on my second tour. So California, I was there for California, but I always tell people, I was like, man, it was like I was being deployed to America, because I spent way more time in Iraq than I did in California. And at one point in time, we were only home for 4 months. If I remember, we got home in August and we left again in December. So yeah, we were there for like a little over 4 months. So we'd spend 6 to 9 months in Iraq and then come home for 4 months. So it was like I was being deployed in America, you know, honestly. But yeah, so
just a rapid deployment.
That's it, man. Especially back then, they were just going back and forth. So after I spent some time in DC and got bored and decided that I wanted to see the world, and they let me go out to California, and I stayed in California and ended up, visiting a couple of countries and stuff as I did that. But basically, going back and forth to Iraq for years, man. And after I did my third tour, came home and became an urban warfare instructor in California, where I taught Marines how to, my specific expertise was we did armored patrol, and so I taught guys how to walk behind tanks and stuff like that in the city. So
nice. We appreciate your service. Thank you. We appreciate you going out and stuff, seeing stuff guys never seen. And I know now you're doing a lot of advocating for like mental health and like suicide prevention and stuff, right? I know because you've probably seen a lot of stuff out there, huh?
Yeah, man. So one of the things that I've learned about is the trauma that guys and girls collect as we live life. As I've talked to a lot of veterans, their combat experience wasn't their first experience with trauma. A lot of times it is how they were raised. In the military, a lot of poor people, a lot of broken homes, people who are searching for a family or searching for a better family than what they have, they end up joining the military. I grew up really poor, so going into the military was a chance to have a better life. So the traumas that I experienced and the traumas that a lot of my friends experienced, and it didn't matter if they were black, white, from New York or from North Carolina or from out west. The crazy thing about the military is that all these guys come together and we're all on the same page. And so I realized that when guys suffer from post-traumatic stress and they come home and they're trying to navigate life, and life's complicated in and of itself. It doesn't need to be made any worse than what it already is, and it already sucks. So add the fact that mentally sometimes you're still stuck in the war. You're hyper vigilant, you're paranoid, you're looking for the enemy, you're re-experiencing things. And one of the biggest blows, I think, to military veterans, and a lot of civilians are surprised when I tell this, but I don't think it's post-traumatic stress, and I don't think it's a lot has to do with fighting the war. In my humble opinion, I went and fought, and I was trained to fight. I was expected to fight, and so when I went through the fight, I seen things and I did things that I justified and I compartmentalized. As a warrior, it's what you do. In order for you to complete the mission, you go and you do things, and you kind of tuck that in the back of your mind, and you drive on. But what hurt me the most was being, a hero for so long, and being looked up, and people talk about you, girls like you, dudes want to be you. And, you get out, people tell you that when you get out of the military, you got all this stuff going for you. And then you get out and there's nothing there. There's no support. Your family's still your family, but life goes on. When you get out and that last paycheck from the military hits the bank and it's gone, well, buddy, you got to go and get a job. And that for most of us, all we got's a high school diploma. And that was me. And here in South Carolina, I got out in 2008. And the recession back in 2008 hit South Carolina hard, and there weren't no jobs. So I did what everybody did. I started going to college, and I went to college, and still it wasn't enough. I was working a little job, making like $8 an hour, trying to go to college, trying to work full time, trying to pay bills because I was I was a big kid now. I wasn't 18, 19 no more. I was 24, and I was expected to pay my own car note, pay my insurance. I think I had a crappy phone back then, one of them flip phones. So I had phones, rent, had to pay groceries, all that stuff. And realizing that when I went through these job interviews and I went through these different places of work, and I sat down and I was like, listen, I did all these cool guy schools. I'm certified like this, and I'm an instructor, and I've done this, I've done that. And then they're like, okay, well, can you type? Do you know how to write code? Have you ever done this? What's your experience? And you're like, well, I don't have experience, but I've led a group of men into combat and brought them back all alive. And they look at you and they're like, anyways, okay, well, we can do $8 an hour. And for a lot of men and women, when you come home, that's a big blow to your self-respect, and you lose your self-worth. In the military, they give you a lot of responsibility. It's no such thing as, hey, we'll just wean you or slowly give you responsibility. After like the first year and a half of being in the military, I mean, they're going to pour responsibility on you. And I'm not talking about giving you a puppy and say, look after the puppy. They're going to give you $6 million worth of equipment in 3 or 4 other men's lives. And they're going to expect you to know, do, and say the right things. And they treat you well, and you're who you are. You're in charge of $6 million or more, and you're in charge of 4 or 5 dudes' lives or more. And then you come home and you have to be certified to carry a hammer, and they're like, well, you can't even carry a hammer. Like, what are you doing here? Like, all right, here's $8 an hour. Enjoy. So a lot of my friends, they would come home and they would just beat themselves up, and they're like, man, I'm worthless and I can't even provide. And people are telling them, hey, thank you for your service and stuff, but they were lost. I was lost. I didn't know how to navigate, I didn't know how to navigate school. I kind of did that on my own and screwed up a time or two with us. If you use the VA, there's a lot of paperwork involved with that. And there's stuff like, what career paths, what should I do next? Who should I talk to? I do have problems, but what am I going to do? And unfortunately, the VA's idea is they just give you a bunch of medication. You can go and talk to somebody, but a lot of times it's new to that individual. The VA is definitely a place for a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists to get their start. And so you have this newish kind of doctor who's trying to navigate the nuances of combat and how you feel and things like that. So it ends up being a nightmare, honestly. And so me and a couple of guys, I was like, look, man, we've got to figure out a way to help these dudes out so that when they get off the bus, they get off the plane, they come home and they realize, like, hey, bud, life's going to happen. Life's here. You've got to continue, and you've got to just, join the rat race, the normal rat race, which is just normal. You got to get a job. You got to get an education. You got to start back. And look, bud, that hardcore life you were living, that cool guy stuff you were doing on the reg, like, jumping out of helicopters and kicking in doors and stuff, that's not, that's over with, but it's not who you are now. It's who you was. And it's a chapter in the book that you're writing. And so you got to look forward to the other chapters, and you've got to not necessarily let that go, because that made you who you are right now. The responsibility, the respect, the punctuality, all that stuff that makes you, that we gain in the military, that's good, all good stuff. And, you should keep that stuff. But, there's more to life than what you did in those 4 years, those 6 years, and 18 years. And for me, it's coming up on 21 years. It was really hard when I first got out to navigate that. So that's kind of long-winded, but what I was trying to get at is that, there is a gap that's being missed. And, the PTSD thing is a very easy thing to label stuff, and it is easy, but it's a lot more nuanced than that. You talk about people's trauma, people who were abused as kids, or grew up in the hood, or grew up in a trailer park around drug addicts and drug dealers and all that kind of stuff. And they don't have a daddy, or they don't have a mama, or their mom and daddy's on drugs, and they got family, but they all, they all doing what they do. And you join the military, you have all that trauma, and you keep all that trauma. And, it talks about, the Bible talks about the fruit that we bear. And, a lot of people don't look at the roots or the soil that we are planted in. And if the roots of that plant is corrupted by, just life, and things that happen, then a lot of times that fruit that's bared is, it's not good fruit. And we look for a better place. We join the military, and war just happens. It's part of the job. And you go and you just add trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma. And when you get to the end of it, man, you're just a bundle of trauma, just trying to navigate it. And I try to advocate guys, and try to help dudes, because a lot of people just want help. That's all. we think that they need programs and books, but a lot of time they just need somebody to sit down and talk things through and try to help them and literally build a true relationship with them, and not just a text once a week, or an email once a week, a mass email or a mass text to check up on people. They need a real person to call them and say, "Hey, bro, how's your week going? How's the wife? How's the kids? How's the job search? How's school? You need help with money? All right, word, I got you. I got some boys that we can call them. We can call the VA. I know the dude over the VA. Let's get you over there. You need a ride to the appointment? Okay, cool. We got you a ride. You need a shirt and tie for an interview, a job interview? We got you. We got you a shirt and tie. It may not be the best thing. It might just be from Wally World, might be from Walmart, but you got a suit and tie to go to an interview. Oh, you've never done an interview. That's cool. Because a lot of people, we think about veterans and we say, well, what's a veteran? And when I grew up, I always thought about my granddad. These old dudes who fought, Vietnam and Korea and World War II. Well, that's not true. I'm 38 years old. And I've got guys who are only 22. You join the military at 18, and after 4 years, you're 22. You're a combat veteran. Well, you're a veteran after only 6 months of serving in the military. So you could be 19 and you're considered a veteran. And a lot of us, we forget about that. We forget that these are young cats. These are dudes who are starting college and never bought a car before. Some of them never even have their own phone program plan. They've been on mom and daddy's phone program plan, and here they are out in the real world. And it just helps when they have a brother or sister who's gone through the ringer before them. And it's just like in the faith, man. It's just like being in Christ. Like when you disciple people, when you talk about the Lord, like you ain't got to be Billy Graham. You ain't got to be Joel Osteen. All you got to be is a day or two into the faith more than the person you're trying to help. Like, hey, man, I've been there. I know exactly what you need. You need this. It's kind of the same thing that I've kind of pointed towards with veterans as I do in the faith. And, not all veterans are Christians. And I get that. Right. And I share my faith with them whenever they're ready. But I think a lot of times we fall short as Christians when we're so excited. We're on fire for the Lord. So as soon as we see somebody, we just want to shove Jesus down their throat. And so they get a bad taste for Jesus.
Yeah.
So I try to build a relationship, and I think that's the most important part is build a relationship with them. And that doesn't mean going out and doing this and doing that with them and that kind of stuff. That's not what it means, whatever that means to you. It's going out to clubs, bars, strip clubs, stuff like that. You don't have to do that to build a relationship with somebody. Like I said, just a text message, a real text message, a real phone call, a lunch, taking them fishing, hanging out, just talking to them, helping them fix their car. Small things like that is what builds real relationships. So that's what I've been trying to do with Violence in Jesus. And that's what I've been trying to do with, suicide prevention in veterans is trying to get to the actual root of it, and not put a giant, massive Band-Aid on it, which is what, unfortunately, the VA and a lot of culture in America has done. So, yeah.
Well, amen, brother. We appreciate you doing God's work. I understand where Violence in Jesus came from. So, and that's really inspiring for a lot of people out there watching, because we got a lot of veterans and military guys watching this podcast right now. And so I know they can relate with you. And anybody trying to find Jesus, what would you tell them if about that? Check out your podcast. How do you check out your podcast?
Oh, well, it's on Spotify. I'm on Spotify. We have a Facebook page, Violence in Jesus. We also on Apple, iTunes, and a couple of smaller podcast places. We tried to stick away. I'm not trying to talk smack about anybody, but we try really hard not to put faces on it. Some of these guys are still cool guys. So I'm still trying to talk some of them into doing a video with our podcast, but right now it's all just audio. Some of them are still active working for some of these organizations, and so I didn't want to put them on blast, but we're working on getting some video that way you can look at my ugly face and listen to me talk at the same time. Yeah.
Well, we're looking forward to it, man. Keep us updated. You know, we'll try to post your material online and videos you guys got.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot. It means a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys heard it. This is George Kite, U.S. Marine War veteran, Presidential Guard, President George Bush, and host of Violence in Jesus. And could you mind me praying, or do you pray? We're gonna say a prayer before we leave.
Oh man, pray. Please pray. Please.
Okay, I'll pray for it. Yeah, dear Father, we just thank you for allowing to have George Kite on today. We ask you just to bless his podcast and bless George Kite and his family. Safety return from being at the war. Bless his friends and family, and we just thank you, God, for another day to do your work. And God, thank you, and let us continue to do your work every day. And just feed and clothe everybody, and if we can live in a world without war. Amen.
Amen. Appreciate you, man.
All right, brother. Hey, we'll do this again sometime. We'll have you jump on here with us.
Yeah, man. I'd love to. It'd be awesome.
All right, brother. Hey, I salute you. And God bless. Violence in Jesus. Lead the way,
man. All right. All right, brother. Appreciate you, man.
All right,
Later.
Later.